apolitical nature of bureaucracy. Okay. Neutrality and also some dimensions of civil services activism. Okay. What is the difference between neutrality and apolitical nature?
By policy formation, we should render our political advice to the politics.
Okay.
Executing also, we should be not biased with any political agenda.
Correct. But what is apolitical nature of bureaucrat? Okay. Your political activities are restricted in terms of contesting election. Okay. Holding an ideology, that is allowed, but you cannot publicly display that ideology. Okay. Thirdly, your association. Okay, because civil services or public servants can form associations and organizations also. Okay, but they will always be associated with those organizations which are recognized by the government. Okay, recognized by the government means what? Now, there are mutual benefit organizations, Army Welfare, Wives Association, okay, or something, Army Welfare Housing Association. Okay, likewise, okay, civil services also have their own associations, but the associations are not for collective bargaining. They are only for furthering some mutual interest, not for political activity. Okay. In America also, I told you, Hatch Act, okay, restricted activities of the political activities of the public servants. In UK also the same thing. Maybe in some countries it is allowed, like France. So in France the public servants are given some political freedoms. Okay. Also there is a restriction on freedom of speech and expression of the public servants. How? In what way in our constitution is it restricted? No, how it is restricted? Article 19, is it fully available to the public servants? No, it is available. Right to strike is not available. Then? Right. But how it is restricted? In what way it is restricted? Okay, there is a personal sphere and public sphere which Weber is talking about. Okay, now purely personal sphere. Okay, purely personal sphere will be those activities where there is no element of official conduct involved. Okay, but there is no purely personal sphere of a public servant. Even if he is attending his own marriage, okay, there also a part of his behavior is a public servant behavior. Are you getting? Okay, so there are a number of restrictions. Freedom of speech means what? We said social media, Twitter. Okay, so there is huge restrictions on this. Why the restriction is there? They must also enjoy the same right as the other citizens of the country. Why should they be restricted?
They are representative of public, not representative of conscience.
Okay, it is the theory of political control of bureaucracy. Okay, bureaucracy is an agent of the state. Okay, an agent is supposed to work under a contractual obligation. Okay, that means what? The public services that you join is a contract, nothing else. Okay, you are not doing it voluntarily. Okay, neither it is like a paropkar or philanthropy that you are doing. So you are bound by the contract or the terms of the agreement between the agent and the principal. Okay, so principal will control you. That is the simple logic. Okay, and also because it is a profession, so profession has its own ethical obligations. Okay, you write few things, it's okay. Right. Apolitical nature. Okay, apolitical nature of the bureaucrats is based on the theory of political control of bureaucracy and the obligations of public services being a profession. Public services being a profession. Okay. Theory of political control of bureaucracy implies an agency approach. To the study of the obligations of bureaucracy towards the political system. कहाँ पे मिस हुआ? Study of कहाँ मिस हुआ एक बार? Okay, or you leave it, you can complete it after. Okay. So agency approach जो है और principal agent model. What is the principal agent model? Okay, that is the important framework to view the relationship of the political system or the democracy and the bureaucracy. Okay. What is the principal agent model?
Here we will hire agents to complete work estimated to
Okay, principal agent. Okay, now imagine you have a gardener and you are going out for a vacation. Okay. So you are paying him, let's say, 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees per week. Okay. Now you are going out for a vacation and you tell him that okay, I will pay you 150 rupees per day. क्या बात है भाई? अच्छा, बहुत ज़्यादा कोहरा है. So I will pay you, let's say, 150 rupees. I will increase your remuneration by, let's say, 50 rupees per day. Okay. When I am not there in my absence, you come every day and clean my garden. Okay. My garden should look as it is right now, prim and proper. So what happens? Now you go. When you come back, you see your garden is as clean as you left it. Okay. And you pay him willingly, let us say, 1,000 rupees or 750, whatever. Okay. The moment you are paying him, your neighbor comes and says, no, why you are paying him? He is a chor, he is a thief. He did not come for 6 days. Now the 7th day he had come and he cleaned your garden. Okay. Now how will the principal, that is the owner, how will he ensure that the agent works in an honest manner? Okay, that is a principal agent problem. Okay. The problem of information sharing between the principal and the agent. Because agent is the one who is actually doing it. Okay. So he knows everything, each and everything. How much information he is telling you or the institution of bureaucracy is telling the political system is not clear, is not known unless they are honest. So while collecting data, if they deliberately eliminate a part of the data and they give you that part of the data which they feel would help them or somewhere okay, help them in their promotion or reward or incentive. So they will deliberately eliminate a part of the data for that benefit. Now you are a political system, you are not doing this exercise, you are not going to the local level and doing it. Okay. So the principal agent problem views this, or principal agent approach views the role of bureaucracy in that way, that agent is always capable of manipulating the information. And information is power. Okay. So the huge control over the knowledge that agent has gives him excessive advantage compared to the political system. So it is very logical that if the bureaucracy tries to engage in political activities, what will happen? It will be one of the biggest threats to the democracy because of its huge control over the information. So it has access to information as well as it has the ability to process the information, both. Okay, right. The principal agent model is based on the following assumptions. Number one, principal is the owner. Principal is the owner, whereas the agent is hired, under a contractual obligation. To fulfill the demands of the principal. Second, the agent has huge control over information. Which it can deliberately use or misuse. Promoting information asymmetry. Between the principal and agent. Information asymmetry means information asymmetry between the principal and the agent. Okay, means that the agent knows more than the principal. Okay. Now, if the agent knows more than the principal, it is obvious that his control over the system is higher. Okay. Okay. Third assumption. Agents are economic rational beings. Now what will be the outcome of this? He will definitely use the information for his own benefit. उसमें कोई शक, there is no probability. Okay, there is no element of confusion that the agent is definitely going to misuse the information. Now this justifies the political control of the bureaucracy, because political system is representative element, or it is the representative system of the people, which is directly controlled by the people, whereas bureaucracy is not directly controlled. Okay. So it is quite obvious that they do not have any representative stake in the power. They are merely working as institutions or people or agents under the contractual obligation, and their duty is to fulfill the contract, nothing else. Okay, that means what? They do not come with any moral or public service obligation to the society. Okay, merely their accountability is to the principal. Okay. But in the democratic system, or where we talk about the representative democracy, okay, or direct democracies, the agents are the bureaucrats and the actual principal is the people or the citizens. So citizens are principals, citizens are using the government as the agent, then government is hiring the bureaucracy. Okay, so ultimately the agent is bureaucrat and the ultimate principal is the citizens, or they are the citizens. So citizens are the real principals, but they are not able to exercise the power. So when you compare the bureaucracy and the actual principal, the agent and the real principal, there also there is huge information asymmetry. Even political system and administration, they can form a nexus. Okay, and they can manipulate the actual principal, that is the citizen, and that is what is done. That is what you call a scam, corruption, fraud, embezzlement, whatever you want to call it. Discretion, misuse of authority, that is all the same thing. Okay. Law is made, you don't know the law, the bureaucrat knows the law, the politician knows the law. Who will use the law? They will use the law. Law will benefit whom? It will benefit them, not us. Okay. That is why RTI is the tool which tends to eliminate the information asymmetry which exists between the agent and the principal. But it is also not a very powerful tool unless the society itself is eager to control the bureaucracy. Society itself not eager to control. Okay, because the odds are totally against the society. We are not informed, so how we can control them? So the apolitical nature is necessary, because if they have control over information and at the same time they have a high capability of information processing, it is very much, you can say it is sure that they are going to use it for their own benefit. Okay, they are also economic rational beings. Impossible. Okay, now you write one line. Okay, the apolitical nature results in restricting the bureaucracy, the bureaucracy as far as the misuse of information and knowledge is concerned. Information and knowledge is concerned. Okay, restrictions like no public interface or not directly using media for personal grievances, etc., helps in restraining the bureaucrats' behavior. Restraining the bureaucrats' behavior to the norms of professional codes. To the norms of professional codes. Okay. The other view that public service is a profession. Service is a profession. Itself promotes a voluntary code of ethics. Itself promotes a voluntary code of ethics to be followed by the public servants. Okay. Various restrictions are justified on the ground. Various restrictions are justified on the ground that that the professions have an inherent ethical and moral component. So the privileges which the public servants, don't write it. So the privileges which the public servants enjoy is basically an outcome of this, that you are a profession, you have invested huge time, okay, in acquiring this knowledge or ability, and so the society will bestow upon you certain privileges, but these privileges cannot be used for your personal ends. So a component of, or ethical component, is already inherent in the term profession, we are saying. So one logic of controlling the bureaucracy is that also, that you are a profession, so there is an ethical and moral obligation, and this you cannot avoid at any cost. Even if there is no rule, your conduct, even your personal conduct, okay, on this ground the personal conduct is also controlled. Okay, that your personal conduct must also be amenable to certain ethical and moral obligations, even though it may not fall in the domain of the professional codes or rules and regulations. Okay. So it's not about apolitical nature only in the office. It is saying apolitical nature also in the house. So you can talk about political ideologies, but if by any way, by any means, you are going for any public interaction, whether in your personal domain also, there also your political ideology must not be reflected. Okay, but it is about an ideal bureaucrat. The real bureaucrat is very different from this ideal bureaucrat. Okay. Next, देखिए. Next behavioral characteristic is the anonymity. So a bureaucrat brings a turnaround in the railways, or a bureaucrat brings a turnaround, let's say, in the home department, okay, or maybe in the transport sector, okay, or maybe in the finance ministry. But it is the minister who gets all the laurels. Why? Who? Minister. Right, but why can't they be appreciated? Why can't they be considered as the ones who are actually taking the decisions? Okay, so anonymity, Weber is saying that the bureaucrats must have a passion for anonymity. Okay. Neither blame, okay, nor fame. So they must neither get a blame nor the fame. But it does not happen. They get the blame but not the fame. So the anonymity, the principle of anonymity is not purely or ideally implemented. Okay. So most of the bureaucrats get blamed for, or scapegoating of the failure of policy is put on the bureaucrats. But the success is taken by the minister. Why is that? Why should that happen? What will anonymity do? Anonymity will not develop bureaucracy as an institution competing with the political system for power or glamour. If that happens, then what will happen? The bureaucracy will emerge as a competitive, as an alternative institution to the political system. Secondly, anonymity will promote certain types of idealisms within the bureaucrats. Okay, so he's saying if you are working anonymously, that will create a missionary zeal. You are working like a missionary. Okay. So it will, in spite of the structure that we have designed, it will promote your sense of public interest. It will keep intact your sense of social contribution to the society. because you are working for, or you are working in a detached manner. The moment you become attached, that very moment you become emotional. When you become emotional, then your values will come. The moment your values will come, the structure of bureaucracy will not perform. Okay. So anonymity is desired. He's saying there is a passion for anonymity. Anonymity also comes with the concept of ministerial responsibility. They are counterparts. Okay, ministerial. Okay, what is ministerial responsibility? Like you said, the minister is responsible. If you go Indian parliamentary system, derived from the British parliamentary system. Okay, what is the name of this system? Westminster model. Okay, and the model of the bureaucracy? Whitehall model, have you heard? Okay, so the Westminster model. Now, what is the Westminster model?
Executive is responsible to the legislature.
Parliamentary system is the Westminster model. Okay. So under the Westminster's model, there is an obligation of the executive towards the legislature. In fact, it is the legislature which causes the formation of the executive. That is what we read in the Constitution. Functions of the legislature, parliament. Okay. It causes the formation of the government or the executive. That means what? That it is the legislature which forms the executive. Okay. Except for some exceptions. People can become the member of a ministry, or they can hold a public office, political public office, in spite of contesting the elections, but maximum for 6 months. Okay. So it is, or executive is derived out of the legislature. Okay, that is the model. So here it becomes obvious that under this model, the executive is responsible to the legislature. So we call it as the model of responsible government. Okay. It is the model of responsible government because the government is responsible to the legislature. If we talk about the presidential system, US type, then it is not a responsible government. Even though it is a welfare government, it is a people-centric government, but it is not a responsible government technically. Why? Because the executive is not responsible to the legislature. Okay, and that is why we say the US president the most powerful executive in the world. Okay, because there is no control of the legislature. Okay, obviously there are some mechanisms of checks and balance. Okay, but it is not as controlled as it is here. So here the government is responsible. Now how the government is responsible? So we have a Westminster model and a cabinet form of government. Okay, the Constitution does not visualize a cabinet form of government, it visualizes a council form of government. Okay, but let us say we have a council of ministers and ultimately cabinet. Where is the cabinet word used in the Constitution?
Emergency provision 352.
Correct. So in the emergency 352 subclause 3 article, the word cabinet comes. Okay, and that too after the emergency. Okay. So when the amendment to this took place. So article 253 he just talks about cabinet. Otherwise, okay, we do not know what exactly the cabinet is. Okay. So it has a cabinet form of government. Okay, but here it is council of ministers. So we follow a model of responsible government, but the government is collectively responsible. So in our system, the ministerial responsibility means the collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers to the legislature. Whereas in Britain, the ministerial responsibility means that both the individual minister is also responsible, as well as the collective council of ministers is also, or the cabinet is also responsible. Okay. So this logic of Weber is saying that if most of the democracies or modern democracies which are there, okay, they are coming with what? The ministerial responsibility. That means the direct responsibility of the minister for the actions or the policy decisions which he takes to the legislature. Legislature is obviously the representative of the citizens. So he is saying, then where is the logic of the bureaucrat coming in the forefront? So if we enforce the ministerial responsibility in the political system, then it is obvious that there must be anonymity of the bureaucracy. Okay, it will also reduce the politicization of bureaucracy. Okay, what is conceived by Wilson? Okay, if the bureaucrats are directly responsible to the legislatures or parliamentarians, then what will happen? They will try towing the line to specific political ideologies. So he believes in what? A clear-cut protection of the bureaucracy from the dangers of politicization, either by the executive or even by the legislature. Okay. So the minister is responsible for all the decisions and actions or consequences of his policies. It is not the bureaucrat. But bureaucrat is internally responsible to the minister. You cannot say bureaucrat is not responsible. But bureaucrat is responsible to his head of department, which is itself the principle of hierarchy of the bureaucracy. So the head of the bureaucracy or administration is what? The secretary, and his head or his boss is the minister. So internally, through the hierarchy, he is responsible to him, but there is no direct responsibility of the bureaucracy towards the legislature. Or this also means that there is no direct responsibility of the bureaucracy towards the people. Okay. And that is why the internal accountability of the bureaucracy is very high, but the external accountability is very less. Are you getting this point? Okay. Right. Anonymity. Okay. According to Weber, the bureaucrats must have a passion for anonymity. A passion for anonymity. That is, neither they take the blame, nor the fame. Anonymity preserves the rational character. Anonymity preserves the rational character as it restricts the tendency of bureaucracy. It restricts the tendency of the bureaucracy to compete with the political system. For a share of public appreciation. Okay. The anonymity is the counterpart of ministerial responsibility. Parliamentary forms of government, next line. Parliamentary forms of government mostly the British type, parliamentary forms of government, mostly the British type, comes with the idea of responsible government. Idea of responsible government. The Council of Ministers is collectively responsible for all its successes and failures. Responsible for all its successes and failures to the Parliament. In the bracket you can write the concept of swim together and sink together. Okay, this is a phrase which is used. The concept of swim together and sink together. Okay. So your vote of no confidence cannot be brought against the individual minister. It can be brought against the Council of Ministers. Okay. So it is quite obvious that how the legislature holds the government responsible, it is collectively. Even your presidential address, which is given on the first day of every new Lok Sabha or on the first day of every new session every year. Okay. That is also like if the voting is done on that, and if it loses the vote, then what happens? Then you can move a vote of no confidence. It can become a ground for no confidence. So it is quite obvious that we have a model of president in parliament. Okay, president is considered to be the part of parliament. President is the face of the executive. So executive basically resides within the legislature. So it is said that okay, it is the decision makers are basically the politicians and not the bureaucrats, and bureaucrats are merely the contractual agents of the political system. So it is the ultimate responsibility is whose? The principals. And who is the principal here? It is technically the government. So in the responsibility and accountability also we discussed that you can delegate the authority but you cannot delegate the responsibility. That is the same logic which is applied here. So even if the government uses or delegates a power of the authority to the bureaucracy to perform certain functions, it cannot delegate its ultimate responsibility. Okay, so the notion of ultimate responsibility is fixed to the executive. Okay, but in Britain, it is the individual minister who can be held responsible also. Okay, Britain has a different system, but we are not following the individual responsibility of the minister. We are following only the collective responsibility. Right. The ultimate responsibility resides within the executive. The ultimate responsibility resides within the executive and the bureaucrat is only an agent performing the pre-decided task. Okay, that is why bureaucracy is not directly responsible to the people. It is only hierarchically responsible to the head, that is the minister. So anonymity would promote a bureaucrat who is more concerned with the fulfillment of the objectives rather than fulfilling his own goals. That is why you need not clamor for power or clamor for glory. That is what Weber feels. Okay, and also it will promote somehow ethical and moral precepts within the bureaucrats. Okay, because they are not associated with the direct fame or blame. Okay, so they will working with the missionary zeal. Likhiye. It promotes a sense of altruism, even though it is not totally correct. It promotes a sense of altruism and a missionary zeal. Sense of altruism and missionary zeal within the bureaucrats. Missionary zeal within the bureaucrats. So anonymity is beneficial. Okay. But what about activism? Violating the neutrality, violating the anonymity both. And maybe apolitical nature also. So will the activism violate the anonymity? Yes. Then what should be done? Or anonymity and activism are compatible? Social media heroes are there. B. Chandrakala. तो भाई इट मस्ट बी मैनिफेस्टेड नो. प्यार है लेकिन दिखेगा कैसे? है कि नहीं? तो जनता के लिए इतना प्यार है तुम्हारे अंदर तो दिखना भी तो चाहिए. एक्टिविज्म विल बी बेसिकली फॉर पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट. तो तुमने बोला मेरा बेटा भी जनता है, मेरा भाई भी जनता है और मेरा सारा प्यार जो है इनके लिए विजिबल है कि नहीं? अपने घर में वो भी तो जनता है. That is what they do, but these are also citizens, they are also citizens, they are also citizens. So let me help. Start charity begins at home. Okay. है कि नहीं? भाई भगवान सबका भला करे, शुरुआत मुझसे करे. है कि नहीं? But that is a logical principle of a rational economic being. God must help everyone, but start with me. That's all. So, how will you manifest the activism by following the anonymity and the neutrality? That is the biggest question. That is why it is necessary that even if you are becoming activist, you must follow the code of conduct. Okay, there must be a civil services law. There must be a code of ethics and not just the professional code for the public servants. So if there is a code of ethics like second ARC. Okay. Now see paper 2, paper 1, all will be intermingled in my class. It is like that only. So in second ARC is saying that the public servants, or in India, there is a lack of civil services law. We have individual services codes and regulations, all India services regulations, central government services regulations, but we don't have a civil services law. The UK, okay, UK was also influenced by these kind of things. Okay, huge corruption in bureaucracy. So UK developed or made a civil services law around 97-98. Okay, fully implemented 2000. So after that civil services law, which was made in UK, Okay, most of the practices or corrupt practices which were visible in the bureaucracy, or you can say deviant behavior, deviation from the ideal bureaucratic behavior or the Weberian behavior. So the deviant behavior which was visible, okay, it was reduced to almost nil, even though corruption has not been eliminated. Okay. But then corruption is not so explicit. Corruption is not that blatant as it was then. Okay. Singapore is also an ideal model. Lee Kuan Yew, okay, the model he proposed, okay, almost 30 years he was the head of the state. Okay. So what he did to the administration of Singapore. Okay. Likewise, there are a number of examples. So bringing a civil services law, what will be a civil services law? Now, for example, in India. No, what is the meaning of civil services law? Okay, you have some law for the politicians? Right, okay. You are not getting the point. If I am saying I have a law for traffic, I have a law for criminal conduct, IPC, okay, I have a law for the process of the justice delivery, CRPC, okay, I have a law for, let's say, the judiciary, okay, not full-fledged law, but Judicial Standards Accountability Act 2010, okay, I have a law for that also, and I have a law for something. So can I have a separate law for the administration, where all the privileges, benefits, wrongdoings, jurisdiction, onus of responsibility, everything can be put into that. That means anybody who falls under the definition of public servant will be subjected to the common law. Are you understanding? So there need not be a separate state law controlling, even though states may be implementing it, states may be the institution which will implement it. But they are not the ones who are going to make a law. So we can make a universal law which will govern the public servant of any kind, any nature, any magnitude, doesn't matter. So you can simply classify that, okay, all class 1 officers here, all class 2 officers or group B officers here, C and D here, these are their obligations, these are their privileges, these are their responsibilities, this is the way of punishment, these are the grounds for rewards, these are the grounds for punishment, these are the grounds for incentive, this is the ground for promotion, this is the ground for transfer. Okay, everything comes in. That means what? The 20 to 30% posts in India which are basically political appointees, or the excessive power which is exercised by the political system on the administration, that will be totally eliminated. In fact, it will become similar to the French concept of administrative law, or French concept of administrative or droit administrative. There is a court, there is a separate administrative system in France. Okay. So it can become like that. More easy. Okay. Though you will need to create some separate institutions, maybe judiciary will be more overburdened. Okay, you may have more number of tribunals dealing with them, but at least there will be a total separation of the public sphere of the public servant from the society and the politics. So why we are not bringing that law? Okay, obviously first it will take huge time to understand the intricacies or the technical nature of the administration, its responsibility, its role in the society, and then frame a law. Okay. It cannot be passed easily because bureaucrats or politicians would want the bureaucrats to become their or keep being their puppets. It is not easy to eliminate that, what you can say, the urge for controlling the police, the administration and the bureaucracy. Impossible. Fine. So if we bring a comprehensive law, okay, if we have a code of ethics for the public servants, if we have a code of ethics for the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats, then definitely the anonymity and the activism can coexist. Here the activism is not the political activism. It is not social activism. It is civil services activism. So they must be active, they must be proactive, but within the constraints of the law which governs them. Are you getting this point? So what is ethical for the bureaucracy? To function within the domains of the law. Okay. Any civil services activism which goes beyond the boundaries or the jurisdiction of the law and somewhere becomes an individual case rather than a process is not acceptable. If it develops a process, it is fine. If it restricts itself to individual incident or an event or an individual, then it is not right. Because it will set a wrong precedent. Ultimately, you need to control bureaucracy politically. Okay. And that is the reason that in India, in spite of having such a strong army, the army also has a constraint through the democratic values. Army is limited by the democratic values. Okay. We have imbibed the democratic ethos in the public services. Otherwise, it is why it is not happening as it is happening in Pakistan or Thailand or some other country, Indonesia or what. Okay, so what they are doing there? Every day military coup is there, are they? Okay, in number of other countries you will find. So why it does not happen? Because they are, or the democratic values themselves are an ethical and moral constraint on the public servants. But you see the discipline which is visible in the army and the other forces, paramilitaries, that discipline is not visible in the civil services. Okay, because they are nurtured by their heritage, pride, okay, sense of the contribution. So the society bestows upon them the social status and the privilege, okay, which makes them work harder for their discipline, whereas that does not happen with the bureaucracy and the police and the other institutions. Same thing. Okay. So if you depoliticize them, definitely their status or social status will improve in the society. People will not view them as corrupt. We have a prejudice that they are corrupt. Understand? So, anonymity and neutrality and the activism may be compatible. There is no problem with that. Okay, write one question here, then we'll move forward. Okay, depoliticization of bureaucracy. Depoliticization of bureaucracy. Depoliticization of bureaucracy is an inevitable aspect of the legal rational bureaucracy. What have been the important behavioral characteristics? What have been the important behavioral characteristics perceived by Weber which contribute towards the above, जो आपने लिखा है, towards the above. Okay. So you have to bring neutrality, anonymity, okay, and apolitical nature of the bureaucracy, the behavioral characteristics which help, and also lack of arbitrariness, lack of subjectivity, lack of values, okay, lack of emotion or sense of what you can say personal attachment, okay, Okay, all this leads to what? This leads to depoliticization. So depoliticization process is not just not aligning with political party. Depoliticization is also a process that you don't think yourself as a political being. You think yourself as a legal rational being. Fine. Okay, next, another important feature is just one, that is the rule orientation. Rule orientation. Okay. What is rule orientation? Following the rule is different, but rule orientation is a wider concept. Rule orientation means behavioral hai, but what does it mean? You follow the rules, you are obsessed with the rules, okay, or you will not do anything unless there is a rule. What is it? All of them. Okay. The bureaucrats don't perform in vacuum. Okay, that is one behavior of the bureaucracy. That unless the things are defined, they cannot act. Okay. Motors Vehicle Act, recent amendments. Okay. Prior to that, the battery rickshaw was not under the Motor Vehicle Act because there was no motor technically. Is it or not? Motor कहाँ है उसमें? Motor है. Okay. The engine classification. Okay. ठीक है. Engine classification जो होता है वो उसमें नहीं है. It does not come under any of the classifications. So it was not controlled by the Motor Vehicle Act. Now there is no other separate act which can control the automobiles. So what was happening? They were moving freely here and there. Okay. So even the policemen, okay, could not, or the traffic police, they could not do anything if there is no law. Okay. So what motivates or what brings a bureaucrat into action? The rule or the law. Okay. Otherwise, okay, they will keep sitting unless a law is made. So the logic is that the bureaucrats have an orientation for rule. If anything that becomes a rule, okay, that becomes their motivation. Unless there is a clear-cut framework, they will not be able to act. This also depicts what? That they are not ready or they are not able to deal with the changing situations. So in situations where there is no solution or the procedure available, okay, they will be demotivated to act. They will not be able to act. They do not have the ability to act. Okay. Are you getting this? So the lack of procedure, the lack of rule, or the lack of, or the high uncertainty will reduce the bureaucratic initiative. The moment uncertainty is high, the bureaucrat retreats from the action. Okay. Okay. It is good or bad, still to be seen. Right. Rule orientation. Right. It includes the following. Number one, decisions and actions are rule bound. Decisions and actions are rule bound. Second, observance of rules is the primary motive and hence a sense of discipline is visible in the bureaucracy. Sense of discipline is visible within the bureaucracy. Okay. Third, or next, lack of prescription or rules may result in may result in bureaucratic inactivism. Bureaucratic inactivism. That is, when there is no framework available, their tendency to act is reduced. Okay, this is the prime reason why the bureaucracy tends to avoid those issues which are uncertain, and not defined in the rules. Uncertain and not defined, or undefined you can write. Certain or undefined in the rules. Okay. So even the chief minister, there have been instances where the bureaucrats have denied the prime ministers from, or they have the decisions of the prime ministers they have denied from implementing because they cited a rule. Sir, whatever you are saying, okay, the rule does not permit it. So if a media person asked, there is a very famous anecdote, a story, that media person asked the Ronald Reagan, that what do you think will be the government stand on this particular thing? So he said, my view is this, I don't know what the government will think. He was the president. So he said, my view is this, but I don't know what the government will think. The government he referred to was the bureaucracy. So what does it mean? That bureaucracy is the real brain. So if, even though we said that it should not be the brain, it does not think, because the political system thinks on behalf of the bureaucracy. Okay, but in reality it does not happen. Okay. So if you say that the bureaucrats, the moment there is some uncertainty or high uncertainty, okay, the bureaucratic system behaves in a way that it wants to, what does it want? It wants to stabilize itself. So it will become more static in nature, so that it does not experience the influence of these changes. So either it will become inactive, or it will ignore those things. Okay, it will not participate, neither it will take the decisions for which it is not sure. So bureaucracy always works for a predictable solution. It has a predictable behavior. That is what he wants, Weber also. That he must have a predictable behavior, not an unpredictable behavior. Okay, fine. So these are important structural and behavioral characteristics as perceived by Weber. But Weber himself was aware that these are one of the best features, okay, and a system which follows all these features is going to be the most rational system. But there is always a danger, okay, posed by this system to the democracy, to the political system. Okay. Like in spite of having the best features, the bureaucracy has the tendency to become become status stratum. Status stratum, what does it mean? Status quoist. Status quoist is correct, but status stratum means a powerful institution. Rigid. Rigid and powerful. So it has the tendency to become or emerge as status stratum. A static equilibrium. Okay, as perceived by Weber. So Weber himself knew that there are dangers posed by this bureaucracy to the other institutions of the society. So it exists in a static equilibrium. It does not want changes. It does not want any kind of adaptation. It does not want novelty. It does not want reform. The bureaucracy comes with a high level of inertia, okay, where it does not want to change, neither it lets the other systems change. Okay, neither it will change itself, neither will change the others. Okay, so somewhere it likes the old school type of existence. Old school type, you understand? Stable structures, yes. What is traditional must continue. Okay. So he's saying that, okay, it has the tendency. Okay. Michael Crozier. Okay, Michael Crozier is saying that bureaucracy does not learn from its errors. It is a kind of organization Okay, his name before also we have referred to. So it has the tendency to emerge as status stratum, a powerful, rigid institution. Okay. Michael Crozier is saying it does not have the ability to learn from its errors. Okay. Its learning ability is highly restricted. It does not want to learn. It again wants to bring to the same old pattern, whatever it is doing. Bennis and Devi, they are saying it is a closed system circularity. Any system, okay, closed system circularity means what? Keeps doing the same thing again and again, again and again, again. So it has a passion for routine. Okay, it never wants to do anything where it seems that bureaucracy is not going to succeed. It will never do that. Okay. So you can see, or the way it acts, it is mostly concerned with the routine activities. Invests so much of time in the routine that it does not need to do new things. Or the time passes away. Okay, focusing more on routine and less on non-routine. So somehow it will always avoid trying any new change which is introduced in the system. Okay. So based on this, okay, and there are so many other criticisms which we'll do, but based on this logic, Weber himself says that the bureaucracy has the tendency to emerge as an obstructive institution because it has the tendency of bureaucratization. Weber is using the term. The tendency of bureaucracy to be bureaucratized is the biggest hindrance to the realization of the goals of democracy. So what should we do? We must control the bureaucracy. Okay. Have you written their names? That's okay. Right. According to Weber, the bureaucracy has, okay, not feeling well? It's okay. According to Weber, the bureaucracy has the tendency of bureaucratization. The tendency of bureaucratization, that is emerging as an obstruction to the goals of democracy, emerging as an obstruction to the goals of democracy. So it must be controlled. So it must be controlled. Okay. So according to Weber, there are certain modes of control of bureaucracy. And what are those modes? Okay. Modes of control of bureaucracy. Okay. So Weber is saying there are various modes or ways by which we can control the bureaucracy. Okay, one of the important ways is collegiality. Collegiality word is coming from the word college. Okay, which means group. Group. How does a college functions? Collegiality when the power will be exercised by a group of people. Board of trustees, okay, or board of directors or something. So he's saying either we must promote the collegial institutions, okay, or collegiality within the bureaucracy. Collegiality means as far as possible various departments may be headed by single individuals, but the overall command must not be within an individual. It can be distributed amongst the group of people. So if that happens, the decision making, okay, because it will not be now under one unity of command, under one person, then it can be easily now controlled. It can be easily changed, modified. Flexibility and adaptability will be high. Okay. Restriction can be there on a single person taking or making the decisions that he wants. Okay. So he's saying promote collegiality. That may be one aspect of controlling the bureaucracy. But then collegiality has its own problems, like it is against the unity of command first of all. Then consensus making would be difficult. Then, correct. Who will own the responsibility? There will be collective responsibility and it will be difficult to enforce it. Accountability will also reduce. Efficiency. Efficiency in terms of speed and time, cost may reduce, but maybe in terms of knowledge it may increase. Right? Two heads are always better than one. तभी तो रावण इतना पावरफुल था भाई, ठीक है कि नहीं भाई, जिसके पास 10 सिर हो सोचने के लिए. So you can imagine. So it cannot say that efficiency will outrightly reduce. Okay, the improvement of or the qualitative aspect of the decisions may increase. Okay, but it may be influenced by politicization also. How? Multiple ideologies will be at work within a collegial system. So they may obstruct each other. They may never come to a consensus. In fact, they may become the hindrance to the decision itself. Okay, they may change the goals of the organizations themselves. Okay. It may also be subject to it may be subjected to groupthink and the bandwagon effect. Okay. So certain people may not actually make a decision, but they may be influenced by the others. The majority influenced by the elite, minority again influence होगा. Like the chairman and maybe one more person in the UPSC interview influences the other members. Okay. The marks are allotted to all the members, but out of respect, okay, and the due seniority, mostly the members give the power to the chairman to give the marks. So even though collegiality is practiced or collegiality is conceived but not practiced in the UPSC. Okay. So same thing may happen here. It may be subjected to groupthink, bandwagon effect. Okay. Suddenly something may happen, all of them may align. First there was no consensus. Okay. Suddenly something happened, something means maybe agreed. Okay, maybe some benefit, something is created and suddenly everybody agrees to a decision. That means what? There has been no rational evaluation of the decision. A minute before you were against, a minute after you are with the decision. Bandwagon effect. Okay. So this, he says, is good but may not be effective. Okay. It may not be as effective as he's saying to reduce the dangers of the bureaucratization, centralization of power, and what you can say the empire building tendency. What is the empire building tendency? You sit at one place, you create your own power nexus, and then you don't want to leave it. Not anarchy. Okay, you have developed entrenched interest on a particular post or in a particular territory. Now what will you do? You will try to be there. You want to fit or you want to stabilize yourself in that particular position, in that particular sector, in that particular territory now. Because you have created your local interest and at the same time your local power structure. Now you don't want to leave it. Because it is beneficial to you, it is giving you protection, security, benefits, okay, and probably political mileage, okay, a kind of shield against the politicians. Okay. So it is providing you various benefits. So what? You will never try to do it. So he is saying instead of that, what we can do? We can promote amateur administration. Okay. People who are skilled, they will come. Perform the task, they will go. Okay, that means what? the way we create a project-based organization. So for a particular project, okay, person from a particular skill and background will come, will be hired under a contractual obligation, perform the task. The moment project is over, let him go now. So he'll go to his parent organization or some private sector. Okay, maybe he is a consultant, okay, who is working here and there on ad hoc manner. So he is trying to promote ad hocism through amateur administration. But he is saying, even if I compare now the performance of administration, amateur administrators with a rational or a permanent administrator within the system, then his performance is much less compared to him, because he is more well versed. Okay, his skill is much developed because of the experience and knowledge which he has acquired. Okay, and he is saying there is always a danger of disloyalty. They are not loyal to the organization. They are not committed to the organization. Okay, so they may promote, they may create conflicts and rifts within the organization, okay, and they may go. Because they are not permanent in nature, okay, they may work only or come purely for their own personal interest, and they can go. How he says, so efficiency will ultimately suffer. So even if we have an amateur administration, okay, his performance vis-a-vis the permanent bureaucracy is not comparable. You are writing or you are just listening to me? Okay, you write also. Amateur administration. Collegiality, have you written this? Okay. Amateur administration. Right. Instead of a permanent top level, instead of a permanent top level bureaucracy, we can hire consultants and specialists. We can hire consultants and specialists. Consultants and specialists who can work under a contract for particular projects. Under a contract for particular projects. Once the project is over, the contract may be terminated. And they may go back to their parent organizations. Okay. So what is the benefit of this? Same, reducing the empire building. It reduces the empire building tendency. An empire building tendency. And also promotes novelty, nayapan, and fresh blood. The Dracula needs every time fresh blood. The bureaucracy is a Dracula. Fresh blood to the administration. Okay. His logic is that he's saying the amateur administration will give opportunity for various type of people to enter the bureaucracy. Okay. But what will be the biggest limitation? That there is no loyalty. There is no commitment. There is no accountability. What is the accountability? You are responsible for a contractual obligation, finish. So your responsibility is purely economic maybe or performance based. But overall contribution to the democracy, the democratic goal, the democratic responsibility with which a bureaucrat or the bureaucrats are trained, into which, that is not visible here. Okay, the limitations are, ऐसे ही लिख दो सीधे, you can understand. The limitations are, number one, lack of commitment and loyalty. Lack of commitment and loyalty. Second, responsibility only for performance and resource. Okay. Sense of democratic, within this itself, right? Sense of democratic responsibility would be missing. Points. Sense of democratic responsibility would be missing. Third, there is also one big fear of sharing of information of the bureaucracy with the outside institutions. Okay. Okay. It also poses a threat to the information security. Information security and vital data related to the functioning of the government. Which can be misused by the other agencies. Now let us say Nandan Nilekani becomes the head of UIDAI, okay, and based on the position he has, he acquires huge information regarding the government. Okay, while trying to understand the process of Aadhaar or interlinking of Aadhaar with various services, he also interacts with numerous state governments, secretaries and other directors or within the government. Now what happens? They also share their experiences and information. Now most of this information may not be written, but it may be available to Nandan Nilekani. So it is not documented, so you cannot have a proof also, but he can misuse also. Okay, that is known as fiduciary information or nature of fiduciary relationship. The information shared based on the trust. Okay, minister to public servant, maybe in their personal discussion he might share certain things. A doctor, patient to a doctor, an advocate or a lawyer or a client to his lawyer, likewise you can share numerous information that is known as fiduciary in nature. Okay, so if the client tells the lawyer that yes, I have murdered that person, but you have to save me. Okay, it is not that the lawyer will go running to the judge and tell him, इसने मुझे बता दिया, ये टाइम मत वेस्ट करो, सीधे इसको सजा दे दो. But he is protected, or his information is protected under what? The moral obligation of the lawyer to protect the information of his client. Okay, they also take an oath. Okay, likewise. So, no doubt you can administer them the oath, but it is not uncommon lying under the oath. Okay. So it is very difficult to protect the information. Okay. Government processes, they may become more vulnerable to the outside forces. Okay. Also changing nature or coming and going of the heads. Okay, what happens? It creates demotivation within the lower level employees. Okay. It may also make them more unaccountable in nature over the time. Okay. Okay, this next point. This also impacts the performance, morale and motivation. This also affects or impacts the performance, morale and motivation of the subordinates and lower level employees. Okay. So it may be one of the suggestions of Weber, but it may not be extraordinary when compared to a permanent rational bureaucracy. So he says there can be another mode. The third mode dividing up the authority He's saying one more, internal restructuring can be done, that for performance of the same function. Okay, what you can do, you can divide up the authority into various departments or the heads of the department. So the same function will not be performed by a single department. A part of the function in one department, another part of the function in another department, and probably the final part of the function in some other department. So what will happen? All these three departmental heads will now have to collaborate. Okay. For example, irrigation, hospitals, OPD अलग है, सर्जरी अलग है, पेशेंट एक ही है, पेशेंट भी अलग अलग है. ठीक है. So ये obvious है. Okay, like you can break it how? See, now if you have to make a mobile phone, for example, what you can do? Assembling somewhere, software somewhere, okay, cover somewhere, screen somewhere, okay, antivirus somewhere. Now what is happening? Unless they all collaborate, the product is not complete. Okay. So same way you can do it here. Policing में, traffic किसी और के अंदर, law and order. Police is one very good example of this, because actual power or centralization of power is visible in the police. But you see Delhi police, the structure of the Delhi police, law and order एक जगह, special cell एक जगह, special investigation team अलग हो गया, crime अलग हो गया, traffic अलग हो गया, ठीक है, north east अलग हो गया, likewise what you've done. So it is the same function, policing, okay, and each of them is a contributory function to the other. By traffic and law and order के collaboration के बिना crime control नहीं हो सकता. Are you getting? So he is saying that if this happens, then it is quite obvious that one person will not have a complete control over one function. And if this happens, then his tendency of centralization or misuse of authority will reduce automatically. But it is so easy. Is it easy? No. You have to find out, you have to discretely analyze each and every aspect of work. Okay, then you have to combine the similar type of task within one department and the similar type of task in the other department and other department. Decision making may suffer. Okay, there may be huge conflicts. One department may be overperforming and the other may be underperforming. Then what? Finally, service or the product will suffer. So it is also not easy to enforce, unless obviously all the departments are at the same level of performance. Fine. So he says that better than all of this now can be the, okay, see this he is basically suggesting within the administration, try to understand. Now he is talking about an external control, that is the direct democracy. So जिस तीनों जो हैं इसको आप बोल सकते हैं, but this political, who is saying direct democracy is the best, but may not be realized in reality, or it may not be achieved in reality. Okay. So one is direct democracy and the other is representative democracy. So he's saying these are the two most effective mechanisms of control over bureaucracy, okay, and both are political in nature. So Wilson also wants a rational bureaucracy and Weber also wants a rational bureaucracy, or at least rational administration and rational bureaucracy. Okay, what is the difference between Weber and Wilson? Weber wants political control of bureaucracy. Right. But bureaucratic? He also talks about elimination of spoil system, but you try to understand why I am asking this. He wants to increase the political control. So increasing political control would pose a danger to the bureaucratization, or will be against the bureaucratization, and it is good. Whereas what Wilson is talking about? Decreasing politicization, decreasing multitudinous monarchs' control, that is public opinion control on the bureaucracy, and he is assuming that bureaucracy is capable of individual or voluntary performance. He gives the best model of the administration, structural. Okay. Wilson only visualizes a structural efficiency of the administration, that it will be emerging as an independent institution and be, okay. Wilson assumes that bureaucracy will perform and there is no danger from the rationalization of administration, but he accepts that there is a danger from the rationalization of administration. So he is more pro-politics than Wilson. Even though Wilson himself became the president later. Okay. His concept on foreign policy, many things, okay, are more respected than his vision of administration. इसके कहने में करने में फर्क है. कहने का मतलब क्या है? Everybody has said. That is not the logic. Okay, what is the theoretical underpinning of Wilson? Wilson views politics as danger to the rationalization of bureaucracy, whereas Weber views that excessive rationalization of bureaucracy is danger to the democracy. Okay. Why? Because Wilson was sociologically much more grounded than Weber was sociologically much more grounded than Wilson. Okay. Wilson's frame of reference was restricted only to politics and administration. Weber's frame of reference included society, socio-cultural, historical, political, and various elements. So his understanding of the nature of bureaucracy or administration or the process of rationalization of administration was much broader compared to the Wilson. इसलिए विल्सन का विजन है और वेबर का थ्योरी है कि नहीं? More practical? Okay. So you might get somewhere or maybe a comparison also about Wilson and Weber. Okay. Because both are practically talking the same thing. He also wants the effective realization of goals of democracy, and he also wants, but he accepts political system as an obstruction to the performance of administration, whereas he does not. He does not want politicization, okay, but he wants political control. Okay, it's not that Wilson does not want, but Wilson feels that political control or more political control will result in politicization. Okay. So logically both are saying the same thing. Okay, but what his scope of analysis is much broader, and his scope of analysis is much parochial or narrow. Fine. So direct representation or direct democracy, this is one important principle, okay, which he talks about, that it is the system or political system of direct democracy can control the bureaucracy. How direct democracy can control the bureaucracy? Direct democracy will be manifested in certain forms. It is more ideal than real. Okay, so what are the forms of direct democracy? Right. Then recall. और कुछ है? और क्या है? Okay, recall. Then any other method is there? और नहीं कोई? सोचो, एक और है तो सोचो. Okay. Referendum is when you make a policy decision, okay, or a law, and then it is approved by the people. So here the legislature makes the law or the government makes the policy, but ultimately it is approved not in-house but by the people. Okay, there is a process of referendum, and generally how much should be the percentage vote? More. If the legislations are very important or they have concern or they are related to the national security, territorial integrity or something, okay, maybe contentious international issue, then the referendum or the percentage of the vote might be increased. Unless the other gets an absolute majority, okay, or unless it gets an absolute approval, it will keep going on and on and on. Okay. Because 50% is what? It is simple majority. 1. Okay, यहाँ पे 1 नहीं हो सकता ना, 51% होगा. 1,25,00,000 में 50% प्लस 1 कैसे होगा? 125 crore, sorry. So, okay. It is not that simple. That means what? First it will be initiated at one level, वहां पे वो referendum होगा, फिर वो ऊपर जाएगा और broader level पे. Fine, it is not that easy. Plebiscite is also a kind of referendum. Okay, but it is related to, especially the issues related to territories. Okay, mostly politically contentious issues. Okay, especially the territory, transfer of territory or access to territory. Okay, but there is a difference. In the referendum, the polling may be done, or generally polling is done on a national issue or an important national issue where everyone participates. But in plebiscite, it may not be necessary. In plebiscite, the people only from that region or territory may vote. And also, not all the people, maybe the community which is affected by the particular decision. Okay, that is why we don't want plebiscite in Kashmir. Right. Initiative petition. Okay. The people will initiate the legislation. Okay, so the initiative for the law or the petition, for the policy comes from the people. So people, it is like a prior approval of a legislation by the people. Okay. Like Lokpal was made outside the Parliament, Lokpal bill. Okay, well that can be. Recall is when you can call back your representatives, selected representatives, before the expiry of the term on certain grounds. So grounds are also mentioned. All these devices are available in direct democracies but not in our country, representative democracy. So he is saying the most impactful of the devices or the ways to control the bureaucracy is the direct democracy, but it is not applicable. It is not practical. Why it is not practical? Population is huge, no doubt. Correct. Territorial constraints are there. Participation, constraints on the participation of all the members. Okay. Thirdly, so we are not going for a direct physical democracy or physical direct democracy. We want a virtual direct democracy. Agree? Use ICT, use e-governance, use social media. We want a real-time voting. Prime Minister is linking Aadhaar to everything, but not to EVM machine. Okay, it should do that also, yes. Voting. Degree. आधे डिग्रीज फेक है इंडिया में, ठीक है, तो क्यों नहीं उससे लिंक करो आधार को, हर चीज से लिंक करो दे. What is the logic? So it is quite obvious, okay, that we don't need, okay, or he would have visualized a direct physical democracy, but now what we need is not the direct, we can use the virtual democracy. So we can use the techniques of the direct democracy like NOTA. NOTA is a move towards the democratization, increasing control over at least the corrupt political system. Okay. Maybe negative voting, maybe another. Social audit is one device which we are using, which is of direct nature. The direct accountability of the administration towards the citizens or the Gram Sabha, वो एक तरीका है. So ultimately he zeroes down to the representative bureaucracy. He is saying that out of all these, the best way to control the bureaucracy is the representative democracy. So representative democracy is what we are following. But representative democracy has its own number of problems. Okay. So we'll discuss in detail when we study bureaucracy and democracy. Okay, almost the same thing. Okay, but we'll not need to study much because we have done so many things here. Okay. So Weber, in spite of all the benefits, also understands the dangers which bureaucracy may pose. Okay. Now Weber has used the bureaucratic approach, okay, to understand the administrative structure or to understand how an ideal administration looks like. Bureaucratic approach means what? He views administration to be a bureaucracy or administration as a bureaucracy. Okay, that is his ideal conception of an administration. Okay, so many people have criticized Weber. Okay, number of criticisms. In fact, the entire public administration content can be developed out of the criticisms of the Weber. Okay. So not many people supported Weber. Okay, not as a theorist, but as or with respect to the idea on bureaucracy. But you can say almost every other theorist was a critique of the Weber. But in spite of that, the Weber has survived. Okay, almost 100 years, more than 100 years. Okay, you can understand that way. If we say bureaucracy somewhere is emerging around 1900s. So more than 100 years or 120 years of dominance of Weber as a theorist and bureaucracy as a structure, both. Okay, why it has happened? You developed an entire discipline based on the criticism of a person. Pabbat can be studied, at least paper 1, in 2 parts. One, the bureaucracy, another the post-bureaucratic developments. Finish. Everything else will come under post-bureaucratic development. Weber has already been considered as, or bureaucracy is considered as paradigm of public administration. By whom? Waldo. Okay. So how did he survive this onslaught? How was he able to succeed in establishing bureaucracy as the most ideal, most preferred structure even today also? Okay, whatever the rhetorical discussion we do over elimination of bureaucracy, every day I am seeing one. There's one student who is a chartered accountant, Kunal Kishore. So every day he is putting one or the other news regarding the reforms in bureaucracy. But not much change. First Administrative Reforms Commission formed in 1966, the second formed in 2005. Who wants to reform the bureaucracy? Nobody. After 41 years, okay, or 40 years, you are forming another second, or the second Administrative Reforms Commission. Okay, that itself conveys your motive behind the reform. So why did bureaucracy succeed all this? How is it possible? Okay, that is the strength of the methodological assumptions of the Weber. Okay. So bureaucracy for him is not an outcome of a theoretical evaluation of the organizational models. For him, the bureaucracy is an outcome of the societal evolution. Okay. So he assumed, or he identified a structure which would be compatible with the evolution of society, and that is why if you'll see in future, as the society is more evolved, the society becomes more bureaucratic. And all the prediction of Marx, even though Marx' intellectual superiority is obvious compared to Weber's. Okay. So in spite of all the predictions of Marx that we will end up in a classless, bureaucracy-less, state-less society, impossible. Nothing happened. Okay. So you can understand. He also understood, or Weber also understood, that the inherent nature of man is what? Rationalization. Inherent need for the existence and survival of man is what? Rationalization. We have civilized, or we have evolved in terms of civilization only because of the rationalization or the ability to rationalize against the nature. If we had not done that, we would not have survived. Is it possible? How can you manipulate or use the natural resource unless you don't rationalize yourself? How can you act against the nature? Nature is spontaneous, but only a rational man can encounter that spontaneity, even though you may not control the nature. That is the theory of probabilism. Okay. Or probabilism, or approach of probabilism. So one is, you have read it somewhere? No. One is determinism and one is probabilism. Okay. So environmental determinism, environmental probabilism. Geography students, okay, or in geography when you study, you might study. So one says that, okay, no, nature will determine our behavior, the nature will determine our growth. The nature will determine our evolution because nature is deterministic. Nature is powerful. Environmental probabilism is saying impossible. The man has the capability to transform the nature, and it will be, now the nature will be governed by the man or the human activity, and it is true. So same way what? He is visualizing that yes, the rationality is inherent to the social evolution. So if I conceive of a perfect ideal or rational structure, it is impossible that it will ever become incompatible with the society. Social needs say bureaucracy and social needs will never become incompatible to each other, and that is why it has survived. Okay. You can say there are a number of changes which have been brought about, but that can be only operational changes to the bureaucracy, not to the original idea or the original theoretical understanding of the Weber regarding the role of bureaucracy in society. That can never be changed. Okay. And that is also the strength of the public administration as a discipline. Are you getting this point? Okay. Plus, PubAd is what? Is more practitioner oriented. So bureaucracy, okay, more practitioner. What society needs? The constitution or the implementation of the constitution? The implementation. As simple as that. You need more laws or you need less laws but effective laws. You need less laws. The utility of administration cannot be undermined. So many people have criticized Weber for this. Okay. But it was not, or their criticisms might be obviously more theoretical and more analytical in nature. Okay. Might not be against the practical structure of the bureaucracy. Okay. But in spite of all the criticisms that people have made, everybody has recognized the resilience of the theory of Weber. Okay. That means it has transcended the various emergence of various other approaches within the public administration or for that matter in the sociology. New approaches emerged, brought new theoretical developments, but none of them could replace the Weberian model. Like behavioralism comes. Okay. Behavioralism criticizes the Weberian model but does not suggest any alternative. It only brings minor repairs to the Weberian bureaucracy. Okay. So number of criticisms are there. Okay. But they must appreciate, or we must appreciate, the circumstance or the change or the transition which this society was undergoing. And in that transition, the Weber conceives of a bureaucracy or bureaucratic model. So you see his context. Okay. Unstable political system, destabilization of monarchies, okay, numerous conflicts going on, industrial revolution going on, okay, a transition towards the industrial revolution taking place, and in that backdrop, you can understand that how much or what kind of changes the society would be witnessing. So in that background, he tries to understand the social development or the level of social evolution, or how the social evolution will impact the structure of organization. Okay. So before we criticize him, we must first appreciate his circumstance. Okay. Also, the criticism is most of the criticisms of the Weber are oriented towards lack of ecological understanding. Okay. So we cannot accept it totally. Why? Because Weber's bureaucracy was sociological concept. Okay. It was not an industrial model. It was not coming from a specific sector. It was a sociological concept. So if you see, historically, if we trace the evolution of various types of institutions, traditional, okay, or worth rational institutions, or then finally Zweck rational institutions. So what is happening? The society and the institutions are collaborating. Either the society transforms the institution, or maybe institution transforms the society. So you cannot say that he did not understand the ecological context of the emergence of various types of institutions or authority systems. But the only drawback was that what he perceived finally was an ideal structure. The moment he says or claims it to be an ideal structure, that means what? That he does not accept or he does not visualize the further evolution of society. He believes the end of the evolution of society would be visible in the form of an ideal rational bureaucracy. That is his static approach. Okay. And the moment you are saying something as ideal, what does it mean? That you do not conceive of any changes within that system. Okay. So we criticize him. That he could not duly change or did not recognize a kind of bureaucratic structure which would change with the society. Okay. So it was more of a static equilibrium concept rather than dynamic equilibrium concept. Okay. So if Weber had said that if you need hierarchy, okay, keep it. If you don't, okay, change it. Then we would have said, yes, he understood the dynamic equilibrium which an organization must undergo along with the society. So political, social, cultural and other factors he should have studied, even though he studied. But he did not bring them into the bureaucratic structure. So his criticism that he did not consider the ecology does not mean that he did not study the society. He studied it. But what he did, he tried to eliminate them from the structure of bureaucracy, making it more objective, or you can say simple sense that he assumed that this is the structure which will not be influenced by these things. Okay. So that is one big criticism of Weber, that he did not have ecological concern. Okay, he could not develop flexible structure of organization. Okay, the moment it will become flexible, the moment it will reduce, the rationality will reduce. Okay. So there are numerous criticisms of Weber. Okay, we'll have to deal with them. Fine. But before you write, one question. Okay. Michael Crozier, okay, is giving a very good sense of the bureaucracy. That bureaucracy is an organization which does not learn from its mistakes. Okay. But the biggest question is whether it recognizes it as a mistake or not. That's the biggest question. Okay. It might have the ability to deal with the mistake, but whether it accepts the mistake as mistake or not, that's the first thing. Bureaucracy cannot do so. Okay, because it is just maintaining the system. Okay. Its utility lies in its ability not to change. Are you getting? That is the utility of bureaucracy. Okay, write a question. Before we criticize Weber, for his lack of idea of ecology, before we criticize Weber for his lack of idea of ecology, before we criticize Weber for his lack of idea of ecology, we must understand the ecology of his ideas. So before we criticize Weber for his lack of understanding of idea of ecology, we must understand the ecology of his idea. What does it mean? Right. उसको क्रिटिसाइज करने से पहले उसके सर्कमस्टांसेस को पढ़ना या समझना जरूरी है. Okay. So he might not have employed the idea of ecology, but try to understand Weber, 1920s. Later Riggs come, 1960s. Behavioralism is much more developed. It has more advanced now. Okay, and based on that logic he is developing. In fact, Riggs was the outcome of Weber only. Riggs is the most dominant theorist in public administration. Okay. And he is an outcome of Weber only. Weber and Riggs and Weber. Riggs is basically deriving his entire logic of the ecological model from the Weber's bureaucracy. Right. सो अभी इतना ही है, कल करेंगे. Criticisms and numerous criticisms are there. You do it in one go. Okay, and keep it because it will always be used throughout the PubAd. Bureaucracy, democracy, comparative public administration, public policy, whatever we do later, this entire will be used again and again and again and again. Okay. If you write the criticisms of Weber, or you know it or at least remember it, then you may be able to solve at least 30% questions in paper 1 as well as paper 2 both. Just by knowing one thing, that is the criticism of Weber. So Weber and his criticism, if you know, almost 30 to 40% questions in public administration. Okay. But it is not easy to remember obviously all of them. Okay, but you must try that as far as possible remember the names and the concept associated, because that concept itself is a dimension. Okay. So Peters principle, Parkinson's law, Mills, Bentham, Marx, many people have criticized. Okay. Almost 30 known, okay, used in the public administration, and obviously there are so many. Okay. New public management is an outcome of the criticism of bureaucracy. Okay. Public choice approach is an outcome of the criticism of the state and the bureaucracy. Marxism is basically an outcome of that, not Weber, but at least the bureaucracy. Okay. Then Neo Weberian state, many things are there. Okay, so we are going to link all of them here itself. Okay. But we are still going through paradigm 2. Okay, that is only symbolic. Okay. Don't link it to one unit. Paradigm 2 is symbolic of the particular age or the era in which these changes took place. Okay. हाँ, बताओ. Policy neutral. Okay, that means if you are implementing, political neutral means that you are not aligning to an ideology. Policy neutral means what? That you are not committed to the goals of the government. Your commitment to the program must be there, but your commitment to the minister who made the program must not be there. नहीं, commitment मतलब performance मान लो. Commitment भी तो एक important desired trait है. Honesty, loyalty, maybe not personal loyalty, but commitment to organizational goals, commitment to organizational rules and regulations. Okay. Passion for increasing the public interest, ये भी commitment है. ठीक है. Zeal जिसको बोला सकता है. Is a? Obviously that is correct. We said कि भाई how personal interest, how can somebody, okay. The question was, there is a word known as euphemism. You understand? So the question is like a euphemism. ठीक है. उसमें neutrality का true sense नहीं था उस question में. Okay. The word was taken literally. That neutrality, how can a thinking person be neutral? Okay, a thinking person is a rational person, and a rational person is a neutral person according to Weber. Are you getting? So if we want, we can counter that question, which is there in the UPSC. So UPSC is saying, how can you ever remove the personal interest from a bureaucrat? So just by talking about principle of neutrality, you cannot assume that people are neutral because they come from a specific sociology, culture, religion, race, and they have those, or they are influenced by those factors in the course of their evolution. So you cannot perceive of a bureaucrat, an ideal bureaucrat, to be totally neutral in the sense of being robotic. Okay, that was the question about. Okay. दोनों एस्पेक्ट लिखो कि न्यूट्रलिटी कमिटमेंट के साथ भी हो सकती है, दैट यू आर कमिटेड टू द पब्लिक इंटरेस्ट बट नॉट टू योर ओन इंटरेस्ट. तो आप न्यूट्रल भी हैं और कमिटेड भी हैं. हाँ, politically neutral or procedurally neutral, but yes, you may deviate from being procedurally neutral, but you must follow the political neutrality. Any doubt you have?
So one question you had given
synonymous to.
It will be a democracy without democratization. How it has to be?
No, if we are only concerned with the role of administration being technical in the society, so that question is about that. That if we consider, like Gulick's statement, so if we consider that the ultimate aim of improving the administration is to increase the performance of administration in terms of time, cost, efficiency, this. So what we are doing? We are ultimately taking out the democratic values from the administration, replacing it by the management efficiency. So what will happen? Ultimately it will be a threat to the democracy. Okay. The process of democratization will include what? The politicization of administration, the control of public opinion, okay, the changes to be brought about in the administration, reforms. So it is against totally the autonomy or complete autonomy of the administration. Okay, efficiency will say that, okay, isolate the administration from the other considerations of the society. Okay. So that kind of administration will look good on paper, in theory, but not in reality. So that is one view, that true efficiency, if becomes the true democracy, then it is against the spirit of democratization. Okay. Rule of law, cultural values, you have to serve the minority, vulnerables, poor, ये कैसे आएगा? Okay. So it must not be procedure centric, it must be goal centric. What they developed was a procedure centric administration. Okay. So we are talking about sensitive, empathetic bureaucracy, empathetic administration. So it is totally against the spirit of simply the efficiency or the cost and time efficiency as conceived by them. Okay, so technical nature of bureaucracy may be good, but may ultimately be a threat also to the democracy. Previous class. We have already discussed this in detail. If you go back and see your notes, political theory of constitution. What is the political theory of constitution? The operationalization of constitution. Okay. But you are philosophical, you are not talking philosophical theory of constitution, political theory of constitution. Okay. So constitution comes with the idea of control of the government or constitutionalism. That is the political theory of constitution. That government must be there, this government must be controlled by a constitution or the political system. Okay. So how do we operationalize the philosophy of the constitution? Through these state or the machinery of the state. So separation of power, division of power, okay, control, or the concept of constitutionalism controlling the various institutions of power. Okay, that is the political theory of constitution. Okay. Constitutional theory of Wilson. What he is saying, that it is getting harder to run a constitution than to make one. So he is almost sharing the similar logic, that making a constitution is not that important as implementing it. Okay. And having a philosophical notion of constitution is not enough. The political aspect of constitution will say what? You have to make laws, you have to amend it, you have to change it. Constitution is an organic document, but not an untouchable document. It is not that sacrosanct that we cannot change it. That means what? It must serve the needs of the society. So same way he is saying that if we talk about administration, okay, then or constitution, then it is the administration which implements, which makes the constitution visible in the society. Are you getting this? So you can make a law, but you may not be able to implement it. So in both these comparisons, the similar logic is that anything which is made, it may have some philosophical notions and it may have some values, but these values can only be used or impacted upon, or they will have an impact on the society only when they are developed into operational principles. Who does it? The politics. Who does it here? The administration. So you see, if more, he has taken the argument further, that if the constitution is operationalized by the political system through the control of various political aspects, okay, he is saying the administration can further implement the values of the constitution by increasing the control over administration, but at the same time making it autonomous. So you create a government, you have a constitution, but who governs, the government or the constitution? The government. In reality, who is governing us? The government. That means what? It is the legislature, the government, the judiciary who can perceive the constitution better than probably who made it, because they are the ones who are using it. Okay. So it is basically talking about the action part of constitution and the action part of the administration. Okay. So it can be compared. It is not saying it is same. First you must understand the question. Okay. It is not saying it is same. Okay, you can counter it also, that the political theory of constitution talks about a limited form of government, control over the institutions of power. Okay. But in the Wilson's analysis, the bureaucracy is being left autonomous. Okay. The control of the the control of the political system over the administration is reduced according to Wilson's notion of autonomy of administration. Wilson conceives of a dichotomy which is not possible under the political theory of constitution. The state may become autonomous, but state may not be separated from the constitution or the ultimate control. So when he is conceiving of a dichotomy, probably he is violating his own logic. Bureaucracy is strong and autonomous. Okay. But it should not be unaccountable. Okay. So operationalizing the constitution means making the institutions powerful and accountable at the same time. Whereas here he is making it powerful but maybe not accountable. Okay. But that is only for criticism. Eventually he is saying that no, we must control the administration. Okay, we can control the administration through the politics, but politics must intervene, it must not interfere. Okay, that is simple logic. Okay, so it's not necessary that you go purely by the expression of the question. It is synonymous, मतलब आपने assume कर लिया कि ये similar है. No, you can take the counter view also. No, don't take the same view. Okay, but you must be able to defend it. It is a statement by Rohr, John Rohr.